Bom dia, pessoal. Prazer recebê-los. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Egli Spinelli. I am a professor and researcher in a program of postgraduate communication course. The name of the course is Communication and Consumption Practices here at ESPM. It's a great pleasure and an honor to welcome Professor and Dr. Michael Rich. His research on screen media and mental health is very relevant for our work. We are very grateful for his presence. Thank you once again for being with us. Now I would pass the floor to Patrícia Blanco, the president of Institute, Palavra Aberta Institute.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone to be here. Dr. Michael Rich with us. We are a great fan of him and his work because he said something that for us is very important about how can we perfect child and teenagers with media literacy. And as Palavra Aberta has the program of media literacy, Educa Media, so we are very honored and also excited to hear that a doctor, a pediatrician, a filmmaker, former filmmaker, made this book and brought the term of media literacy as a tool to protect child in the digital economy. So, Michael, it's a very great pleasure to be here. For you to be here, yes, it's a great pleasure for you to be. So just in English, I'm very loose, but that's okay. So, and also what I'd like to point is that today it's a starting of a great relationship with Digital Media Lab, and also all the partners that came here to be with us to start this conversation and to put our efforts to protect this subject that is very important, and also to make a good environment for them to grow up, because we know screens they are not going to go away, so we have to teach them to use well with help and also with security. So thank you so much. And also I'm not switch to Portuguese just to get some information about what we're going to have here. So, bom, nós vamos ter agora um momento de apresentação inicial do Dr. Michael, depois perguntas e respostas da Dami e da Mari, e aí a gente vai abrir para o público em geral, para vocês. Quem tiver perguntas, por favor, podem fazer em português, a gente traduz, podem fazer em inglês, fiquem à vontade. O objetivo aqui é que a gente converse e tenha, de fato, uma super manhã rica de trocas e principalmente aproveitando a presença do do Michael aqui. Então, muito obrigada e bem-vindo a todos. Daniela e Mariana, they can assume your face of that push.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Bom dia, Patrícia. Obrigada, bom dia, pessoal, tudo bem? A Patrícia explicou um pouquinho da nossa dinâmica. Vim para fazer uma breve apresentação, embora todo mundo conheça o trabalho, né, do Michael Rich. Ele vai falar com a gente e a gente depois estabelece um diálogo. Okay, I'm using my cell phone, but I'm here.
I don't have one anymore.
What's in my heart?
Okay.
It's not Instagram, right?
No.
Not TikTok.
No. Because I'm too old for TikTok.
No, you aren't. No one's too old for TikTok.
No. Okay, so I'll give
We have to. Yeah, the elders are having issues. Scheme media too.
O Dr. Michael Rich é pediatra, pesquisador, conhecido como Pediatrician, por seu trabalho pioneiro na interseção entre saúde, infâncias, adolescências e mídias. formado pela Harvard Medical School, é fundador e diretor do Digital Wellness Lab no Boston Children's Hospital e professor de Pediatria e Saúde Social em Harvard. Como vocês sabem, é autor do livro, que agora está ganhando uma tradução em português, e a gente tem a felicidade de encontrar, de conhecer, de ter contato com esse livro de uma maneira bastante exclusiva. Ele está sendo lançado ainda agora. O próprio Dr. Rich comentou que não tinha visto ainda e segurado a atenção em português. Então, we are very honored to be here for the launch of the Portuguese edition of your book. No livro, Dr. Rich discute amplamente os riscos, os desafios dos ambientes digitais, mas também as oportunidades, que não podem ser esquecidas. E preconiza a educação midiática e a presença constante dos familiares e responsáveis de crianças e adolescentes na preparação para que eles se tornem aptos a lidar com as telas de uma maneira mais segura, mais responsável e mais equilibrada. Por isso, ele convida mães, pais, educadores, cuidadores, de uma maneira geral, a entenderem como os mais jovens interagem com as tecnologias digitais no cotidiano. E foca no desenvolvimento do pensamento crítico e na construção de hábitos saudáveis de uso das mídias, tudo com base em evidências científicas, ao invés de impor regras rígidas ou optar pela proibição de todo e qualquer dispositivo, qualquer tela. O Dr. Rich defende um modelo de orientação que envolve escuta ativa, coparticipação e empatia, preparando as crianças e os adolescentes para navegarem o mundo digital com autonomia, responsabilidade e bem-estar. E defende um modelo de educação baseado em 3 E's, que vem de modelar, de fazer a mentoria e monitorar. Mas aí a gente deixa para ele contar um pouquinho mais sobre essa abordagem. Thank you very much for being here with us today. So,
Thank you. Well, I figured I would start exactly the way I start with my patient, which is, how can I help? And the kids who I take care of in the Clinic for Interactive Media and Internet Disorders are often kids who've really gone down the rabbit hole of gaming or social media, pornography, or what we call information binging, which is endless YouTube, Reddit, Quora, etc. And they're shocked when I say that. They think that their parents have dragged them into me to take away their toys. And I'm sitting here, I want to help them. And one of the first things I do is I ask them what their pain points are, what bothers them. And a lot of times it was hurt, mom, here, dads, right? That's their pain point. And what I will say to the parents, and I say to all parents, is stop being the police and start supporting their success. And share their screens with them. I should give you a little background on me, which is kind of interesting. I'm not a pediatrician from birth. I actually spent 12 years in the film industry, working as a screenwriter, as filmmaker, and actually spent 2 years in Japan as apprenticing to Akira Kurosawa, the guy that made Seven Samurai. It was an incredible experience. Not one I would want to do again. He was, let's just say he put all of his humanity into his films and leave it at that. But I've been instructed by my dear friend, who some of you may know, Dr. Evelyn Eisenstein in Rio, that I need to explain what a pediatrician is. So after coming back from Kurosawa and going into the American film industry, I said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It was kind of like going from Rembrandt's studio into a car manufacturing plant, right? And I said, so I had my midlife crisis and went to medical school. That's a midlife crisis that'll really wreck your life. But as I was coming up in my training in the early 1990s, it was when people were becoming really concerned about the effect of screens, then television, on kids' physical, social, and mental health. It was the time of the couch potato. Is my child becoming fat, stupid, and violent on the screen, on the couch in front of the screen? And because I'd had this experience in the media world, the American Academy of Pediatrics brought me on to help them develop practice policy statements for pediatricians. And after doing that for about a decade, I realized that we were not operating with enough science. We did not have enough data to really understand how young people in particular, but how all of us are changed by the screens we use and how we use them. And so actually I moved away from the advocacy role that I was in writing policy statements to let's get some science, let's build some science. And so for the last 20 years or so, I have been running a research group, first called the Center on Media and Child Health, and now the Digital Wellness Lab. And that transformation happened because I was being put on these big platforms, national meetings, international meetings, and they put me next to someone from Google or someone from Apple and watch us argue. I said it was academic cage fighting. You know, two walk in, one walks out, right? And I would, in some ways, surprise them because, of course, the corporations would send out their social responsibility people, corporate social responsibility people, and they'd be saying all the right things, and they'd be talking about how hard they're working for internet safety. And I would say to them, stop talking about internet safety. And they'd go, what? But we're the good guys. We're supporting what you say. I said, no. You start with internet safety, and you are saying the internet is unsafe. And you have to enter it in a defensive stance, protect yourself at all costs. This is the environment these kids are living in, they're growing up in. They have to be competent in it. They have to be, we should be talking about internet mastery, not internet safety. Think about another powerful tool that we teach children, an automobile, right? We wait until they're old enough to need it, and they can reach the pedals, but old enough to need it, can handle it, in our opinion, responsibly and with respect for themselves and others. And then we sit right next to them, white knuckled in the front seat, and teach them to drive, but we don't say, don't hit that car, don't run over that pedestrian. We teach them to drive, and in the process of mastering this automobile, they become safe for themselves and others. They become good citizens, and that's the way we should be approaching the digital ecosystem and all of these devices and platforms in which they function. I've also been instructed by Dr. Eisenstein, and I have to explain what a mediatrician is, because it does not translate into what you do very well. I'll be perfectly honest with you. A mediatrician is the marriage of the word media and the word pediatrician. And true confessions, it was one of those in the shower aha moments. Of course, right? But it means I have to explain it. And the reason for the book came about because as I've been doing this for 30-some years, this has always been a very adversarial environment between those who are concerned about kids and education and good citizenship and those in the media industries, the tech industries, et cetera, as if, one or the other has to win. And having had a foot in both worlds, really, I said, look, the screens aren't going away. We can't ban them. We're not going to protect kids from them. And in fact, we adults can't protect the kids. What we can do is give them the tools to protect themselves. And parents will say to me, oh, what's the best software for protecting my child online? I'll say it sits between your child's ears, right? It's what we feed in here to give them the tools to do it. And so the book came about because in this very polarized adversarial environment, there are a lot of people who make a lot of noise saying, the kids are ruined, right? I won't name any names, but who lead with fear of the digital ecosystem and guilt for the parents who've already ruined a generation. The kids will be okay. Just we have to be okay with them, and we have to give them the tools to do it. And that's what the origin of this book is. I I actually like the subtitle of this book in English. I hope it was translated into Portuguese correctly. I couldn't possibly tell you. But I love the subtitle more than the title, The Pediatrician's Guide, but it's a joyful approach to raising healthy, smart, kind kids in a screen-saturated world. Kind is really important. That's what makes us human. That's what connects us. And so the way I organize this book is in 4 sections. The first one is what? What is going on with the human brain, the human body developing in an environment, in an ecosystem? And part of what I'm talking about in that is things like the idea of screen time limits is obsolete. Why is it obsolete? Because I study this stuff and I couldn't possibly tell you how much screen time I had yesterday, because we move in and out of screens seamlessly all day long. Every time we look at our Apple Watch or our smartphone, I used to have a smartphone until I got to Guarulhos. I will have one yet again, but I've been living in freedom for the last 3 or 4 days. So we can't measure screen time, but what we can measure is our non-screen time, our intentional non-use of screens. So the first is what, and it really traces the human development from birth really to early adulthood in a screen environment, looking at the positives as well as the negatives, so that we can make choices, we can guide ourselves toward the better. The second part is so what, right? Well, all the things that we worry about: violence, sex, drugs, eating disorders, and what we call problematic interactive media use, or PIMU, which is what at one point was thought of as addiction to the internet or whatever. But in our 8+ years of direct clinical work with these kids, we've realized that addiction is not a good model for what's going on. It was the one people jumped on at the beginning because it felt right. It looked like that. But if you think about it, addiction in its traditional sense, and addiction, of course, is not a medical term at all. It's a social term. We talk about substance use disorders, et cetera. But if you think about it, it is use of a pleasurable but unnecessary substance, whether it be alcohol or cocaine or opioids, that is driven by physiologic drivers of wanting to feel better and then not wanting to feel worse when we're withdrawing. It does continue despite negative consequences to their life, but our therapeutic goal is abstinence. You don't need alcohol to survive. You can stop. Let's think about interactive media now. I would argue that it is now a necessary resource for life, to learn, to communicate, to connect, to live our lives, to buy our groceries. We need to be able in this environment. It is not driven by physiologic drivers. We don't have measurable physiologic changes when using or when withdrawing, but it is driven by psychological drivers. And in the hundreds of kids we've seen who've really gotten out of control in the interactive environment, every single one of them has had one or more of 4 underlying conditions. The first being attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, particularly the gamers who spend all day in class, confused. They can't hold a conversation even in the playground, and they go home and they put on Call of Duty, and they are amazing. In fact, they are better than so-called neurotypical kids because distractibility is adapted in that environment. The ability to know someone's coming around the corner, et cetera. The second is anxiety, social anxiety in particular, and that drives a lot of the social media use, which of course, you go to social media to make connections with other human beings, and all you see is that everybody else is prettier, skinnier, richer, happier, and has hotter boyfriends than you do, right? And so you feel worse afterwards. The anxiety gets worse. The third is autism spectrum disorder, and with with actually all 3 of these first 3, we've had a fair number of first diagnoses So kids who get to be, 18 or 20 years old before anybody realizes that they're on the autism spectrum, because it is truly a spectrum. And many of them are very, very adaptable and very well compensated. And the fourth is depression. And so one of the things that is often said is that screen use causes anxiety and depression. Actually, what we have found is that anxiety and depression lead them to screen use, which then accelerates and amplifies that. But it doesn't cause it. It's not the origin of it. We have yet to find someone for whom everything is great, and then boom, that the screen did it to them. So that's the so what part. That's the part where people worry about. And the third part is now what? What going forward, what have we learned even from the days of television, all of the other stuff, as we look forward into AI, generative AI, but also companion AI, and all variants of this, and the so-called metaverse. How can we extrapolate from what we've learned with other media to look at the future, not with fear, but with confidence and with open-mindedness? I see this, we are all in and always will be in a work in progress, right? We will always be getting better. We'll never get to perfect. And one of the things I actually say about parenting is, as much as it can be guided by science, it's ultimately an art. And people learn that when they have their second kid. Oh my God, they're not all the same, right? One size does not fit all. And then the fourth part is for those who either need a refresher or don't have the time to read the first three parts. Is a primer. It's actually ages and stages, point by point, sort of what's going on with your kid, what you can do about it and stuff. And I really see this book as an offering to begin a dialogue with all of you and with all the people you serve, to really hear from people what they're struggling with, what they're seeing, and problem solving it together. We are in this big social experiment. And unlike the tech companies, we as parents, and that is by far, for all the introduction that I just got, the most important role I play is as a parent. That we as parents are constantly trying to get better. And that's okay. And so I urge us all to use what I call the 4 H's of parenting. The first one, obviously, is honesty. We have to be honest with our kids. If our kid wants a smartphone, we need to be able to be honest and talk to them about what they might encounter. They are one click away from pornography, from hate sites, from all kinds of things. If my child is not ready to talk about these things, my child is not ready to have a smartphone, because they're going to come across them very quickly. So honesty, humanity, we're building humans here. What kind of humans do we want them to be? Another huge one is humility. We have to be humble as parents, because if we don't practice it ourselves, our kids will humble us very, very quickly. One of the things that is really important is to explore this digital space with them. Not warn them about it, not tell them all the awful things about it, but share it with them. And when we come across things that worry us, be honest about it and talk about it. And the fourth one, and one which you will detect from the way I speak, is possibly the most important one, is humor. Have a sense of humor. We are so flawed. We have so much to do to get ourselves better. But if we can laugh about it, at least, we can move on. We're not defeated by it. So I think that's my spiel. Let's open. Let's talk. Let me learn from you.
That's a very good spiel. Thank you. So,
I forgot something when I was talking before. Just to say that this is the book the Brazilian, the Portuguese version of the book, o Guia do Pediatra. Unfortunately, Joy
The word joy. Yeah.
Didn't make it in?
Não, mas era minha pelo.
how
Wait there, what did they do wrong?
help children, intelligent help children with respect. So it's the good year. But I would like to thank you for Maite and the Artmed. They because they will get on one book for each year. So then Michael can find. So thank you, Maite and Artmed, for this.
This, I saw this for the first time today, just so you know.
Michael, do you want to tell people what the image is on the
Oh,
cover?
yes, this is this was published in the United States by HarperCollins, one of the big publishing houses. And as this was going into final production stage, their art director sent me her proposed cover for the book. And it was an obviously affluent white teenage girl sitting in a beanbag chair smiling at her tablet. And I said, I don't know if this translates into Portuguese very well, but I said, this is bullshit. Because this is not what it's about. It's not an affluent kid's problem. It's not a, do I need to edit that part out of the tape? Okay.
We don't have translation for that. We use bullshit as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay. It's Esperanto, right? Yeah. But I said, humor me a little bit and let me propose a cover. They said, okay, yeah, he was a filmmaker. He thinks he knows how to do graphic design, all this. I asked everybody I knew for selfies of kids. And this image of a young child of unclear gender, unclear ethnicity, looking up for advice is actually a photo mosaic of over 600 selfies of children. And the cool thing about it is when kids whose selfies are there get the book, they find themselves. It's amazing how self-aware they are. So it's kind of a visual metaphor for what the book is about, which is it's for all of us. And it's of all of us as well. You know, that much of the book, as some of you I know have read the book or at least put beautiful colored stickers in them, is what I've learned from the kids I've worked with, what they've taught me. And I think that's also a key thing in parenting is listen to your kids. Be there for them and listen to them. So anyway.
Thank you.
Sure.
So this is how this is going to work. Danielle and I were going to ask you a few questions and sort of start a dialogue for a little bit, and then we're going to have the opportunity to have questions from the audience.
Absolutely.
Okay, and have a real conversation. And the first one I wanted to ask, and I'm glad you brought it out, and Patricia, it was about joy, because unfortunately the word is not in the Portuguese translation, but the subtitle in English is, I'm going to say it again, a joyful approach to raising healthy, smart, kind kids in a screen-saturated world, which is, and this focus of joy on joy and wellness is so different from the framing of fear, from the dark and frightening narratives we've been getting. So, and yet you are discussing the very real risks that kids are exposed to. So I wanted to ask you about this framing and what actually changes for families when you choose joy as the driver.
Well, the first response when I say to the parents, stop policing your child, is the parents and the kid almost simultaneously go, right? They're relieved that, you know, they don't feel that it has to be a conflict around everything. And adolescence can be a conflict anyway, with or without screens, right? Because the child is driven to individuate, to be an autonomous, independent person separate from their parents. And, you know, there are arguments about every little and big thing in their lives. You know, there was once a parenting book that was titled, I Hate You, Get Out of My Life, but First Can You Take Cheryl and Me to the Mall? Which is kind of adolescence in a nutshell, right? And so that's the first thing. And what I really want them to do is to share in this space. when you look at the number of hours that we actively use screens, and sometimes 2 or more screens at the same time, these kids are living in the digital space as much or even more as they are in the physical space. And for them, it's a single environment they're moving in and out of all the time. Let's be with them. I'll tell parents who come in, I can't stand it. He's playing Grand Theft Auto all the time. And I'll say, I want you to sit down next to him, pick up the controller and game with him. And they go, what? You want me to game with him? But he'll beat me. I say, yeah, he will. He will beat you. And what will happen is that you, by sitting down next to him and being his student, are saying, I love you, I respect you, I want to understand what engages you here. And then when you finally figure out the 47 different moves it takes to steal a car, and you turn to him and say, I finally figured this out, yay! Now, let's talk a little bit about why you might want to steal cars over and over and again all day. And you're coming from a very different place. I talk about the 5 M's of digital wellness, and the first one being to model the behavior you want to see in your child. And one of the fairly subversive questions I ask of my teenage patients when their parents are out of the room is, what could your parent do better? And almost always the first thing out of their mouth is, pay more attention to me. Their parents are staring at their smartphones, at that all-important email from the boss, or WhatsApp, in case of Brazil, from the boss, and yelling at them to stop playing Grand Theft Auto. They're not sharing with them. And when I talk to the parents about how they should introduce devices, I say, I want you to think about what the device is, what it does, whether your child needs it and you think she or he can handle it responsibly, and with respect for themselves and others, and then sit down next to them and explore it together. Parents say to me that they dread the internet talk more than they dread the sex talk, right? That used to be the big thing of teenagers, the sex talk. Parents think they know something about sex, but they know that their kid knows more than they do about the internet, and they do not like not being the smartest one in the room, not being the expert. And so I say, you're not there to teach them, you're there to mentor them. Because mentors learn as much from the mentee as the mentee learns from the mentor. Sit down next to them in a spirit of mutual curiosity and learn the smartphone. And you know what? They will teach you things on that smartphone you didn't even know you could do. And that's cool. That's really cool because you're there as a partner, as a peer in a sense. And what you are starting is a dialogue about their experience, their lives in the digital space. And so model mentor leads into the third M, which is the one that parents and kids push back the hardest thing about, but you've already started the process in the mentorship, and that is be able to monitor your child's digital life. If you are not willing to send your child off to a party at a house you don't know, whether they have drugs or weapons or alcohol or whatever, don't send them off to the 24/7 party of the internet without the same openness about it. Now, the parents say, I don't have the time to be online as much as he's gaming or as much as she's on social media. And the kids say, I want my privacy, right? But to a 13-year-old, privacy means so mom and dad can't see, right? The millions of other people out there who have less good intentions than mom and dad, they're completely unaware of. And they could care less about because they're strangers. It doesn't matter to them. But if you have your child's username and passwords and are able to monitor them, their behavior changes because they know you're there, not to spy on them. And, you know, it's a matter of mutual trust and respect to say, I'm not there to spy on you. I'm there to be there to behind you, to support you, to back you up. And so when they come across something that confuses them, upsets them, you know, whatever, you are not there to wag a finger at them. This is not about right and wrong, good and bad. This is about figuring the world out. And if you're there behind them, I will tell you for sure that they will make Finstas. Does everybody know what a Finsta is? You know, Finsta is a fake Instagram account.
Finsta.
Okay, that you don't tell your parents about. But what's interesting about Finstas is they're for their closest friends. And they're the ones that they, will actually confide in each other and say who I have a crush on or who pisses me off or what's going on. It's where they're truly authentic on social media. And one of the big problems with the way we use social media, our public social media, is we use it to market ourselves to the world, to show what a great vacation I went on, or my dad's new sports car, or my hot new boyfriend, right? And so people who are feeling lonely and seeking connection go to that space, and everybody looks happier and wealthier and better looking, et cetera, than they are, and they come back feeling less than because they know their inner limitations. And I have this belief and fantasy that someday, if we can all learn to use social media as a Finsta, being honest with each other, being authentic with each other, that there'll be a kid in Ukraine and a kid in Russia who are on social media with each other, and their leaders will say, that's the enemy. And they'll say, no, that's not the enemy. That's my friend. I don't know who you are, but I'm not taking up arms against them. Can we make social media an instrument of peace? That's my fantasy anyway. But I think that's about the joy, is let's retain our humanity. Let's build on that. And let's use these powerful tools with respect and effectiveness.
That's a beautiful image. Yeah. That's a good dream to have.
Well, let's dream it together.
Yeah. I'm going to segue just very quickly before I pass it on to Daniela. You mentioned privacy, and monitoring, of course, is one of your 3 M's. So can you expand a little on this release of privacy and in the building of autonomy as they get a little older, like past 13? What happens?
Well, hopefully, and in most cases, it's a variable, but you keep having a dialogue with them. It's really important never to tease them, never to, sort of, hey, I like that, you like that cute guy in, the second row class. You say that, they're going to shut down completely, right? Because they do like that cute guy in the second row of the class. But so it's really about showing them that you respect their privacy, you respect their independence, and you're not scared of the things that they might think they should hide from you, right? That you're not scared of them coming onto a pornography site, for example. The average age in the United States right now and I'm talking average, so we've got a bell-shaped curve, average age of reaching a pornography site is now 9 years old. And that means that there are 6-year-olds finding pornography. Obviously to a prepubertal person, it's a very different experience. And one of the things that I truly worry about, and actually we have a subset of patients who have come to us, usually male college students, who are coming to our clinic, not dragged in by their parents, but on their own. And they say, I spent my adolescence with pornography, and I don't know how to overcome my fear of intimacy to talk to someone I'm romantically or sexually interested in. And they essentially get stopped in their tracks in terms of their sexual development. And so the idea here is, how can we best push the door open and leave it open, but not necessarily step through it, so that the child feels you're a safe place, that you're not going to wag a finger at them. And actually, an analogy I use for parents is, a teenage child who's already driving, who's going to a party, and if there's alcohol at that party and you consume it, I want you to call me and I will come pick you up. I will not be angry at you for drinking. I will be very upset if you drink and drive, right? So this is the same sort of analogy, which is, I'm there for you. And yes, I'm going to try to put guardrails around you, but I'm not going to punish you for doing something that, quite frankly, is normative for adolescence, which is to push the limits a little bit and find where those limits are.
Dr. Mariko, I'd like to go back to something you mentioned before, that we are focused on screen time. So I feel that most of the time we are trying to find very simplistic answers for complex challenges. So, in your opinion, how can we move away from overly simplistic and binary narratives about how we use screens in general to a more relaxed and informed discussions? Because it's easier to start a conversation saying, "Oh, your child can have a smartphone and he or she is able to watch half an hour in a day." But half an hour of what?
Right. That absolutely. First of all, there's no data-driven number where at what point the screen use goes from okay to toxic, right? So, back in the days of television, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and actually I was part of the original group that wrote this policy, recommended 1 to 2 hours of quality educational screen time per day. That was only in the days of television. And there was a problem with that. First of all, there's no parent who knows what quality is or what educational is, right? They don't have the skill set. So they just figure out it. And of course, the television companies try to label everything educational because they figure it'll get more viewers. The other thing that happened is, when you say 1 to 2 hours, okay, let's say the kid has 1 hour. So she or he comes home from school, gets right in front of the screen and watches. And what happens at the end of an hour? Absolutely nothing. So it's an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. Mom or dad comes up and says, "Hey, you've got homework to do," or "Weren't you going to play basketball with your friend this afternoon," or whatever. And it becomes an argument every single time. I want to finish this program. I want to level up in my game, whatever it is. So it became the forbidden fruit. And so the shift here is not only that it's not just single receptive television screens, but there are multiple screens. They're in our pockets, they're on our wrists, they're in the wall of every built environment we're in. It's about what you're doing on that screen and what you're not doing because you're on that screen. So, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not, playing basketball with your friend, if you're not doing things. So it's really about taking care of and stewarding ourselves in this environment and actually intentionally doing non-screen things. And so, we sort of talk about digital wellness as wellness that comes about from the intentional use of the screens in our lives. And mastery, which we talked about at the beginning, internet mastery, is one of the 2 good M's that follow the 3 M's, is also knowing when what you have is not the best tool for the job and turning it off and taking a walk in the woods, or, having a conversation, or best of all, being bored. We have to bring back boredom. Because boredom is where creativity and imagination happen, not just because it gives you the empty space in your mind, but because that empty space feels a little uncomfortable. So you fill it with something else. And for those of you who know the Joni Mitchell song, Both Sides Now, and the opening of the song is "Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air." I had to explain to a teenage girl what that was about, because she had no concept that there was a time when you would lie on your back in the grass and make shapes out of the clouds, right? And so we are so averse to boredom that we can't get on an elevator without pulling out our smartphones, or on a bus. If we walk down the street and everybody's got their phones and their AirPods in, and you smile at someone you don't know, it's creepy, right? It's not. It used to be friendly, and now you're penetrating their privacy in some way. And I'll say one experience that I had fairly recently was in the hospital. And as you might imagine, dealing with these kids who really, dropped out of school, some of the attempted suicide because of what they've done online. So I come at the end of a clinic session, I'm exhausted. I feel like I've been given soul transfusions all day to these kids. So I walk out of the hospital exhausted. I turn toward where my car is parked, and there was a brilliant sunset. Pinks and golds and purples, and all of that exhaustion and sort of kind of hopelessness just fell away from me. And then I looked around me on the street, and everybody was doing this.
Yeah. Or taking pictures of the sky to post.
Right. And you know what? When you look at that picture, it's not nearly as good. It's never as good.
I think before we can open to questions, we would love to hear from you something about, of course, we are working with media literacy, so we'd love to hear from you what skills do you think are crucial considering media literacy today in order to navigate this digital world, the more safety and critical
thinking.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, as I'm sure most of you know, media literacy is really about understanding media as a manufactured product. It is not the truth. It is one vision of the truth. And actually, I will recommend a film by my mentor Kurosawa called Rashomon, if you've ever, those of you who've seen it. It shows that everybody's truth is different. And that's in fact the case. But that understand that it is manufactured, understand that it is made by somebody or some group of people who want you to behave in a certain way as a result of seeing it, or to believe in a certain way as a result of seeing it. To look at it as something that you are seeing from your own perspective, but wonder how someone of a different race, a different culture, a different sexuality might see that same material. But I think that that's a foundation now for going forward, because we now need to build on media literacy and develop media fluency. In other words, it is not just about deconstructing and protecting ourselves from what's coming in. It's also about what we're putting out. And how do we communicate? Because now we're all in a constant dialogue with the universe, right? It is not just us being entertained. It is we're, call and response, all back and forth. And how will other people hear and see what you are saying and showing? And understanding that we only own a piece of experience, of the world experience, and we need to learn to listen well to each other, not just in a conversation like this, but online as well, to listen between the lines, if you will, and to really be able to open this dialogue. And maybe that's part of my fantasy as an instrument of peace, is how do we open a dialogue where we are open and vulnerable with each other enough to get to a higher place.
Beautiful. I had one last question, may I, before we turn over to the audience? We've been talking about the kids and teenagers.
What about us?
But I wanted to shine the light on the adults a little bit. And there's a line from the book, and actually you mentioned just a slightly different version of it. You've written, if you're not prepared to discuss society's evils with your child, then you're not prepared to give them a smartphone. But it's not just a matter of avoiding difficult subjects. We realize that not too many adults are necessarily prepared to understand the complexities of today's digital environments, let alone explain them to a child. Mm-hmm. So what do you think are some of the barriers that we're facing when we're putting this responsibility on adults, and how can we address that?
I think part of it is the humility part, authority, which is understanding that we don't have all the answers yet. And also to realize that there are things we can learn from that child that will help us and help us co-discover, right? What's going on, and I don't think we serve either ourselves or the children well by trying to put blinders on, by saying, I'm going to block all the porn sites. You're not going to block all the porn sites. They're always going to be there. Even YouTube Kids had pornography mashups on it, cartoon mashups of pornography. So we can't depend on either the tech companies or the legislators to protect us. We have to protect ourselves and our own,
As well.
not in a way of shunning the rest of the world so much as being conscious and aware and understanding that there's a wide range of humanity. There are always going to be bad actors. But let's not go through our life trying to protect ourselves and each other from bad actors. Let's lean into this and be good actors, right? And teach by example.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'd like to take questions from the audience, and I'm going to explain in português. Vocês podem perguntar em português ou em inglês. Se alguém quiser falar em português, a gente traduz. Tá? Não tem problema, só levanta a mão e eu vou pedir para a Catarina ajudar a gente a ver quem está perguntando.
Olá, eu sou Vinícius,
Vinícius.
sou jornalista aqui em São Paulo. Aproveitando sua experiência, uma carreira audiovisual no cinema, gostaria de perguntar para a senhora a importância de que séries como a gente teve, não sei se esse ano ou ano passado, adolescentes, no Netflix, como esses produtos audiovisuais traduzem, às vezes, conceitos que a gente, como jornalista e especialista, como pediatra, muitas vezes insiste, mas não chega da maneira necessária ou na rapidez que Netflix consegue atingir um público e finalmente a mensagem se espalha. E minha segunda pergunta é de que maneira o senhor Abadia ou se conecta ao trabalho de Jonathan Haidt, que a gente teve uma visita dele aqui o ano passado e acho que esse ano também uma turnê do Brasil e que o uso do trabalho vocês se conectam ou se distanciam.
You're going to
I'll
work on
translate.
that one.
Yeah. No, I'm just a translator here. Don't push that one on me. No. Vinicius is a journalist.
Yes.
And the first question is, drawing from your experience as in media, in film production, he's asking about the importance of audiovisual products, entertainment products, such as the Adolescents show, series on Netflix, and how these things might perhaps get concepts across in a way that travels faster and better than maybe pediatricians, doctors, or even journalists could to reach people and translate concepts and so on. Right. So he wanted your take on that. And one at a time?
One at a time. Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I will speak directly actually to the Netflix Adolescents. And my biggest problem with that was its title. Because it implies that all of adolescence is that experience. And that is a fringe experience. Absolutely it's true, but we should talk more directly about toxic masculinity. We should talk more directly about the way that people are trolled online because they feel safe, they feel invulnerable, so they will harass others. They will do things they would never dare to do to someone's face. But this is just a part of the experience. Now, I totally agree with you that making these kind of audiovisual films or television or even TikToks are a very powerful way, and I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater, as we say. But we also owe it to ourselves and each other to give as much of the truth and of the variation of the truth as possible. And that's what worried me the most about adolescence, is it kind of implied that every kid is kind of going through this, kind of life and death, struggle. And that's one experience, but it's the extreme experience. And unfortunately, dystopian visions sell more movies than, happier ones or harder ones. And that is one of the things that I think separates good cinema from okay or average cinema. And again, to go back to my mentor, Kurosawa, There's a very early film he made whose title is Norainu in Japanese, Stray Dog in English. I'm not sure what it is in Portuguese, but it's the story of a young detective, police detective, who has his pistol stolen in the immediate post-war years when the only people who had weapons were the police. And the whole story is about him trying to recover this pistol from a bad guy. And then seeing the final scene of it is he's chasing him through this head-high, reeds and grass, and they're getting covered with mud, and they end up wrestling, and they end up lying back on the grass, falling back exhausted side by side. And you realize how very much alike they are. But the difference between them is the bad guy is not bad because he's evil. He's bad because he thinks he's a finished thing. He thinks he's got it all figured out. And the young guy understands that he's still becoming, he's still learning, he's still growing. And that's where we need to be. That's where we need our help. Our kids, not just our kids to be, but all of us to be, to recognize that we're still a work in progress. We're still trying to get better. And it's the trying to get better that it will hopefully overcome the sense that I'm done. And I think that that's where a lot of parents get into trouble, is they feel like, I've got it all figured out. I know it. I'm going to pass this on to you in a kind of a rigid, codified way. And I'm not able to move with you into this new world of the digital ecosystem.
So what you said about adolescents taking one extreme case for the whole is actually a very nice hook for the second question, which was...
Good questions.
Which was, what are the points of contact, if any, and differences between your work and Jonathan Haidt's, which, as he mentioned, a very nice choice of what he said, went on a tour in Brazil.
Yeah.
Last year was actually here a couple of times and had a lot of influence and space in the media.
Not only media, but also among co-graduates.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well-
parents associations in schools and so on.
Okay, this is a very complicated question that I will try to answer as succinctly as possible. I am grateful to Jonathan Haidt for sounding the alarm. I don't think he provided any useful solutions. A couple of reasons for that. Number one is that he cherry picks the science that supports his preconceived notions, ignores a lot of science that is much more balanced than his is. But my biggest issue is he does not work with the young people. He is not there with them, hearing them, and listening to the things they're struggling with, listening to the insights that they have, and learning from them. Instead, it is much easier for legislators, for parents to have, okay, at 14, they're old enough to have a smartphone, and at 16, they're old enough to have social media. There are no data that support that. That is, which way is the wind blowing? This is what bothers me the most, is because it turns it into that binary answer to a complex and nuanced question. And of course people want to say, it's like, just say no to drugs, right? That's just the beginning of it. You can't, they have to understand why one would say no to drugs, and they have to say no, not do it because I tell them to. And so, I will totally admit that Jonathan Haidt probably sells 100,000 books for every one of my books that are sold. But he throws it out there like red meat, but doesn't give you anything to do with it. And so I'm grateful to him for raising the alarm, and I'm hopeful that people will be able to use this information and that which you are creating in your media literacy courses, in your to take a more human and nuanced approach to this, and frankly, one that is more resilient and flexible, because this is a point in time where you can sort of say, cut off the social media, cut off the smartphones. guess what? 6 months from now, we're going to be in a different environment. And we have to learn from the past and extrapolate into the future. And that's why that whole section is now what?
Now what?
Right?
Yeah.
So now how can we build on what we have learned to lean into this with confidence and with our eyes open and retaining our humanity and particularly listening to the kids. You know, one of the really cool things that has happened with the Digital Wellness Lab is we have a student advisory council, which each year we have a bunch of kids who spend a year learning media literacy, learning, you know, fluency, learning how to create. And at the end of the year, they present to CEOs of tech companies their suggestions of what the CEOs need to do. And of course, the kids think this is the coolest thing ever to be talking to the CEO of TikTok or whatever. The CEOs think it's cool too, because they're hearing from their customers. They're hearing from those that they need to speak to. And in fact, one of the wonderful things that came out of this is the kids said, we should have them make a pledge to create a better space. And that gave rise to something called the Inspired Internet Pledge that we announced at Cannes, at the Cannes Lions Festival, which is the advertising equivalent of the Cannes Film Festival. That is a 3-point aspirational pledge for the companies to sign on to. The first point is to tune their product for emotional wellness. The second is listen and respond to those who have encountered harm. And the third is to share information on what is healthy, what is wellness in their space, and not use it as a competitive edge. Now, of course, people said that you're crazy. No one will ever sign that. But I said, look, this is not binding. This is, I don't want to talk to your lawyers and how, they don't want to get boxed into a corner where they can get sued. This is aspirational. You reach toward this, and by signing this, you are notifying your customers that this is what your hope is. And if they don't feel that you're doing it, they can vote with their wallets, right? They can vote with their eyeballs. We now have, I think, 30 plus companies, including TikTok and Pinterest and Google, that have signed on to this. Whether they stick to it or not is up to them and up to those who choose to use them.
We're watching. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And your words, your message, it's very beautiful, and I'm very honored and grateful to be here because I'm Juliana. And I am a pediatrician too, and I am an endocrinologist. And everything that you talk here, it's all that I really believe. And I think that your work and Jonathan's hard work and works, sometimes I will talk some words not exactly correctly, but you can help me. And then, but I think that your works, they complementary one each other, because one of the first into weekend survival is about fear. Absolutely. So, hey everybody, there is something wrong here. But one of the most things that can do,
Pode falar, a gente está bem.
a gente progredir.
To evolve. That makes us evolve. One of the things that makes us evolve.
It's about pertencimento.
Belonging.
And that's what you are doing. And I think that it's exactly what we have to show, not just here, but we start in a few small groups. But exactly, how can we show belonging and the basis of health life to help our children to grow with health, really health. Health about body, mental, heart, and so I think and what I want to know is how can we do this, not just in the
In our offices, in the doctor's offices.
how can we do this in the other parts with more groups? Once I was talking, I talked with programador.
A developer, a coding developer.
We can do a play talking about the really things that can we do as saudável.
That can make us things that can make us healthier. That you could program a game to teach us how to do healthier things.
Absolutely.
But
I completely agree with you, and I want to point out to everybody in the room how pediatricians think. Right? We just want to hug everybody. We do, but can we live that way? Can we model that for others? And it really is more than just what we do in the office. It's how we live our lives. It's how we talk to each other. And one of the privileges we have as pediatricians is that people listen to us because we don't have a dog in the commercial fight, right? We don't benefit one way or the other by the choices they make. It benefits the kids, and they know we're there for the kids. A couple of things that you brought up that are really interesting. One is we just finished collecting data on a huge survey on belonging, on how belonging works in the digital ecosystem. So stay tuned for the results from that, because we're seeing some very, very interesting things from that. And we're probably going to be, we're already set up to present them at both at Davos at the World Economic Forum, but also at the Aspen Ideas Festival, which I don't know if you know about, but it's a wonderful, wonderful meeting of really interesting people. But as an endocrinologist, I also want to tell you about work we're doing right now, which is we are looking at oxytocin, which is it's the hormone that is released with milk let down in a nursing mom, but it works in all of us. And we call it the cuddle chemical, right? The chemical that makes you want to cuddle or feel cuddled. And we're actually doing biomarkers around how people are using their digital media and taking hair samples, measuring cortisol and oxytocin over time, which is kind of interesting. So, wow, that's a long way around answering your question, but I think that, quite honestly, in the simplest and most direct sense, the best we can do is that first M, is model those behaviors. Be the change we want to see, and take it from there, because people will argue. And there's been a lot of fear and a lot of guilt stirred up by Jonathan Haidt, and I worry that when we make decisions from fear and guilt, we make bad decisions. We make snap survival decisions, as you say, primitive survival decisions.
Primitive.
This is about the quality of our lives, not just the quantity of our lives. It's about the quality of our lives and how, not only how we feel, but how we make others feel. And so I think that it's really important to put the fear aside, put the guilt aside, because if we focus on that, we're going to miss the kids who are growing up in the meantime. And, I've spent a lot of time, particularly early in my career, testifying to the U.S. Congress and other legislators. I hate to sound cynical, but legislation and, in fact, litigation, the lawsuits that happen, it's too slow. And the way the law works is always coming to a compromise. With kids, we don't have the time to wait in the 5 years it'll take to pass a law. That goes from birth to kindergarten, or from kindergarten to middle school. I mean, these are critical years. We can't wait for them to fix it for the kids. We have to be there for the kids and with the kids and give them the tools to take care of themselves and each other. So I call myself an optimistic pragmatist, which is I'm optimistic because of the kids' joie de vivre, their joy of life, their enthusiasm, their positivity. But I'm also a pragmatist and say we've got to deal with right now, because we can't wait for 5 years for politicians who, quite frankly, don't understand the problem fully anyway, and we'll come to a negotiating compromise that in 5 years from now that would have worked maybe now, but in 5 years from now is an eternity in internet time, and it'll always be behind.
I used to say that we are the generation that we have the compromise to teach our children and the others people that come after them, that we have to put together the all technology and the all things that we have that is human.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have to do that.
Absolutely.
We are this generation that has to do that.
And let me tell you some good news. Gen Z is starting to get it. They look at the millennials and they say, I don't want to be staring at my smartphone all the time. I want to touch grass. You hear the expression touch grass, right? I want to be in nature. I want to be with others. And one of the things I say to kids that I take care of, I say, if you're thinking of connecting with a friend, always upgrade at least by one. Instead of tweeting text, instead of texting call, better yet video call, best of all, get together face to face. And they look at it and they go, what? Hey, you can't learn to make out with a smartphone.
Yeah.
Let's go to what they're really interested in.
Natalia.
My name is Natalia. I am an educator and I am a researcher that focuses on education technology. And my question is about the role of the school in escalation.
Yeah.
We have here in Brazil made big set of solutions, technological solutions for schools with tablets, notebooks, and for everyone. And the schools are buying this because they earn much more money from parents. And we have the example of Sweden that recently had changed its education policy. They had used to have many digital solutions. Now they are going back to the handwriting and printed solutions. What is good, but it's being used as an argument for people who believe that technology is an enemy, and we know that they are not. So my question is how to find this balance in school and how we as teachers can do something to help the young people with the kids.
I would argue that as an educator and a researcher, you're doing that every day, which is that we are looking at the kids. We are seeing what they're learning. One of the things that we learned from the big push, one tablet for every child, is that one tablet for every 2 or 3 kids is more effective than one tablet for every child, because you get the synergy and the discussion going. Learning and teaching are highly relational. It's not just about the material, it's about the relationship between the teacher and the student, between the student and the student. We are learning that slowly, but we have to be careful not to fall into that binary thing of, tablet's bad, pen good, they're all part of the tools we use. And that's the big shift that I feel is so important, is to understand that smartphones and tablets and computers are tools. They're not toys to be given because the child did well, or to be taken away because the child punched his sister, but to, use it for what they do well, master it to the point where you realize it is not a Swiss Army knife for life that does everything, right? It is something that does certain things better than anything in the world. We can have a 10-year-old child in a classroom on top of Mount Everest and on Mars, in the space of a single class. What an amazing capability that is. But they can also be, spying on their neighbors, or, right, at a porn site or whatever. So it's about using these tools effectively and learning and observing this. And this is one of the things that I think is so important about the mentoring your child with these devices, is that you're able to watch them and see how they respond and know, oh, she's got that mastered, we're going to move to the next thing. Or, wow, that's still freaking them out, let's back off a little bit. And it's kind of like walking a dog, you know. If for those of you who've walked a dog, the dog wants to go, 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 go. And you let them go, and then they start growling at somebody, you pull the leash in a little bit, right? You know, et cetera. And this is in many ways what teaching is about, is really observing the kids. They're going to drive the car, but we put the guardrails in place. We keep them from driving off the cliff, but we don't wrestle with them for the steering wheel, right?
We had 3 more questions. Okay. Here.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you so much for the talk. I very love your work, but I fell in love with your vision. You mentioned that, like the cynics in Greece,
Yes.
this joyful approach to problems and so on. So I'm in the final part of my PhD, but I will find time to read your book because I really like your vision. But the things that I wanted to discuss, it starts like in a broad way, in the broad sense, but then goes into specifics. What's your vision related to, you know, when media literacy discussions started like to gain ground? When in the 70s, we were discussing television, radio, but nowadays, these technologies are developed with a new set of tools and knowledge, you know, like behaviorist design, economics, that type of thing, predictive algorithms. What do you think that these technologies specifically bring to the table in terms of challenges to media literacy projects, to the educational approach, and the limits of this type of efforts? Because we're dealing with, you know, very new technologies that nudge our behavior in a lot of different ways. This is the broad question. And when was the specific one? It's related to regulation, because we're seeing across the globe a lot of new laws related to age verification. We're seeing this, for instance, in Australia, which is limiting social media access to 16 years of or more. The same discussions are happening in France, in some states in the US, in Brazil. And at the same time, we're seeing the effects of this type of legislations. For instance, in the UK, we have age verification law, which is actually, we are already seeing some of the effects of this law because, for instance, access to Pornhub is going down, but at the same time, these kids are going to even like obscure websites, you know, websites with more radical pornography, that type of thing. So, summarizing, what are the new challenges that you see in the educational field, and how can we deal with these new regulations, and what are the arguments that you think we should bring to the table discussing the limits of this type of efforts?
You have already outed me as a cynic, so I'm quite cynical about regulations for a couple of reasons. Number one is they are based on age-appropriate use of this, right? I have 2 problems with that concept. The first one is age, because no kid of a certain age is the same, right? There are some 5-year-olds who can handle things that there are 15-year-olds who can't, and you can do any variable there. So using age as a criterion, as if one size fits all, you know, you're a pediatrician, they're all different. Kids are different. The other piece of it is appropriate, because appropriate is a values-laden word. And in the United States, as I'm sure you're aware, what's appropriate in Massachusetts or California may not be appropriate in Florida or Texas, right? And so what I try to move forward with parents and with all of us is, instead of age appropriate, developmentally optimal. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one is the moment you say an age, not only are all kids diverse, but what about the so-called neurodivergent kids? They're excluded from that. They are other. They are off the map, if you will. And they deserve and actually often can use the digital ecosystem more effectively than so-called neurotypical kids. So I believe that all of us are neurodiverse. And that's what makes us interesting to each other, right? Think about the people you know who are brilliant musicians and can't hold a conversation for the life of them, right? Why would we give that up? Why would we give that texture, that specialness up? So I have a problem with age appropriate for that reason. And developmentally optimal means that even the kid who has cognitive issues can come to it and use it in ways that help her or him. So I don't want to use it as an exclusive thing. The other piece of it is I don't actually believe in regulations or even rules in the household, and I'll tell you why. Because at least if using myself as a measure, every time I heard a rule, I tried to figure out how to get around it. Right? Kids are programmed to try to hack the system to get around the right. What I like to talk about in families is expectations, right? What are your expectations? Not just the parents' expectations for the child, but the child's expectation for the parents. And I love it when kids say, "Put your smartphone down," and here's the other piece of it. Rules, because we think of them as something made to be broken, get your parents angry at you, right? Right. Some mom's angry at me, whatever. If we don't meet mom's expectations, she's disappointed in us. And that's much more powerful. That lingers, right? When we fall short of expectations. And it makes it much more fair, just between, it's not top down parents telling kids what to do. It's all of us deciding, how do we want to be with each other? And how much more powerful that is, right? And it doesn't trigger the I'm going to beat the system. So when you get your PhD done, come and work with us as a postdoc. Seriously. I mean, one of the things, we have, junior faculty, postdocs, even doctoral students from around the world who've come to work at the Digital Wellness Lab because we're trying to change the paradigm here. We're trying to change it from the academics saying, oh, this is bad, let's tell the tech companies to do it right. I'm saying, what about if we all come together around a table and roll up our sleeves and work the problem together, bringing our separate skill sets to bear on this? Because you know what? Even the software engineers have children. And one of the things that I think is saddest is you go to Silicon Valley and they're sending their kids to Waldorf schools, which are screen-free schools. They are not letting their kids. Steve Jobs didn't let his kids have iPads. How cynical is that, right? That I'm making a product that's going to make me billions of dollars, but I'm not going to let my kid use it.
Hello, hi, my name is Lina. I run an NGO in Brazil that we work civic education and social emotion in school, working through experience. That's quite different that people do. It's not, we don't go by, by boats and everything, just go by activities in this classroom. Yeah. And I wanted to come back, she said before, about the belonging part that he said a little bit, and coming back about how teacher can help, because I see the interaction that we say between parents and kids, but also between teachers and students, how they expect the students, the teachers expect them to know everything, and the children expect the teachers to know everything. Yeah. And what we work a lot about and the experience we give the teachers is how to build together. But in the end, what I believe is when you feel that it belongs somewhere, if you belong to your family, if you belong to the school, everything comes back to the same question. If you go to the media, so you want to belong to a community, you have group and social media as well. So how can we help teachers and students to listen to each other in school and feeling as a belonger in the place they are?
The answer to your question is in your question. Okay? How can we teach them to listen to each other? And that's ultimately what it's about. It also speaks to bringing to this relationship that level of humility that, I don't have the answers, but together we may come to an answer. And also to recognize that may work today, but that we're going to keep working it going forward as well, because conditions change, things happen. So if we enter into it with, you're absolutely right, with a sense of belonging, we have ownership of the outcome. It is not something that's being brought to us or forced upon us, but something that we co-own with our community, with our teachers, with our parents, with whatever group it is. And I love the fact that you're doing social emotional learning, and I want to also respect the fact that it's not just something that is taught, it is something that is lived. And I think the best social emotional learning happens in the lunchroom and in the hallways and in the sports fields and, just in being humans. And one of the things, as I know is happening also in Brazil, but in the US, big discussions about smartphones in schools. And should they be banned? Should they be, only during instructional time banned? Should that, whatever. And I think we need to take a step back and think about what the role of school is in a child's life. I see two very important things happening in school. One, of course, is the didactic learning of math and science and literature and arts and all the things that are the basis of a liberal arts education, but quite frankly, may or may not be used in their future life. The social emotional learning that is happening every second of every day is going to be used throughout their lives. Let's think about how smartphones fit into those two things. Obviously, it's a distraction from the social, from the didactic learning, right? And we learned that, unfortunately, only too well during the COVID lockdown, when some kids, the only interactive media device they had was a smartphone, and it just isn't big enough. There isn't enough real estate on that screen to do effective learning with it. Let's think about social emotional learning. And I'm talking about not the classes in it, but the hallways, the lunchrooms and stuff. School is the first place that children get to be an individual in a society of their own making, where they figure out, who do I like, who do I not like, why do I not like, how do I work with somebody I don't like, how do I take on challenges, how do I handle failure and pick myself up. If we have in our pocket mommy or daddy say, how did you do on that quiz? Do I need to talk to your teacher? What's going on in the playground? Oh, that kid's still picking on you. Oh, you hit him back, or whatever. The young person never gets the opportunity to figure this out for her or himself. These are the skills that they're going to carry through into the rest of their lives. And mommy's not going to be in their pocket when they're 35 years old at work, right? And so I think we have to think of what role that smartphones play in it. The flip side of it, though, this is a powerful tool that they need to learn, and we need to teach them to use it effectively. Because right now what's happening is they're teaching themselves, and they're not going in the right direction always. And we need to teach them, just as we teach them to use a computer, as we teach them to use a pencil, as we teach them to use a paintbrush. These are powerful tools that they need to learn to use in ways that preserve and promote humanity rather than you exploit it in one way or another. So thank you for your work. Keep it up. And if we could be of any help, there's a lot of free material available at digitalwellnesslab.org. And I would urge you, we'll be posting the results of the belonging study as soon as they're done. So please use our stuff.
How can I get the results of your research about belong?
On our website, we usually have the top lines. Unfortunately, as academics, we have to also publish in journals, et cetera, so that there are links to all of that available. I wish I could give it away for free. Those journals don't always give it away for free, but if you email me directly, I'll
Tinha mais uma? Posso fazer uma? Tem mais uma?
Bom dia, meu nome é Márcia, eu sou responsável por ter assessora de currículo.
Bom dia, meu nome é Paz.
still not work.
Bom dia de novo. Again. Meu nome é Márcia, eu sou responsável pelo currículo de educação digital de uma escola que começou com educação infantil e está subindo agora para o ensino médio. Então, a gente está desenhando esse currículo. Mas é uma escola que tem no seu DNA a questão da educação infantil do corpo, muito corpo e das questões de comunidade. E nós estamos construindo lá a de conversa. E vamos fazer agora com uma psicanalista que tem trabalhado as questões de mídia e rede social, que eu a responsável pelo currículo com as famílias. Me incomoda muito nas reuniões de escolas com famílias essas questões muito da distopia, né, do desespero. Eu acho que isso faz daqui uma impotência, né, nas famílias. Então, a gente está tentando criar uma roda de conversa que seja, na verdade, uma comunidade de ajuda, ali, de apoio. Né? Como ele falou, o doutor Misterelli, eu queria ser mais puta para te ajudar essa tradução. Mas... Só para eu dizer que, assim, se ele conhece alguma experiência que pudesse facilitar para a gente, dentro cedo aí, de alguma comunidade escolar que está fazendo um trabalho menos de palestra e mais de construção nele. Ele falou, né, eu estou aqui para as crianças, mas nós temos que estar aqui uns para os outros, em como uma comunidade pequena, né, que é uma escola que pode se ajudar nessas situações. Então, colando um pouco na pergunta anterior, né, isso aqui é a mesma questão entre professor e aluno, mas em que essa comunidade escolar. Hoje, nesse mês leite, para você que você entendeu, não tem.
Obrigada, Bada.
I got the Six Sigma part of that.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
Pois é, então, algum gasto que ele tenha visto, tenha feito uma construção mais dialógica, mais interessante nesse sentido. Ah, desculpa.
Te pego depois. Sei onde você mora. Marcia's a curriculum developer at a school that started as kindergarten, but is moving up to middle and high school. And they have a lot of work around community and body issues, and they have this method of having discussion groups, discussion circles with families. And now they're trying to set up a community to discuss digital issues, and they're very troubled about this dystopic, desperate view that's being posed on families by the culture in general and by media. And they're trying to create something that goes beyond lectures, but more of a community, a school parent community that could be continually discussing these issues and offering support. So she wants to know if you know of any actual examples of this kind of thing that you could share where there's been a successful attempt to build, not just to come in and do a one-off lecture, but actually doing a community, ongoing community to support parents, school and parents. Did I get this right? Thank you.
There are number one. I will tell you what we are doing from the Digital Wellness Lab, which we found to be as effective as we've been able to make it, but we're also willing to learn from others and do others. But one of the things that we will do with a school is have a full day where my team and I are actually doing workshops with the kids at various ages. Obviously, what you do with a kindergartner is going to be different than what you do with a high school student. So we break them into groups and we co-generate what we're learning. Hearing from them what they're concerned about, giving them some solutions and ideas. So we'll do things like we'll do a class in which we bring in plain white masks and paints and have them paint themselves as they are online and as they are, what mask are they online? That's half of the face. The other half of the face is who are they IRL, in real life. So that's just one example of it. But we work with the kids during the school day. At the end of the school day, we do the same thing with the faculty and the staff, including the people who are pushing the brooms and making the lunch and all, so that, we are engaging them as peers in a community. And in the evening, we speak to the parents. And the idea is to set it up so that the kids are speaking to the parents are speaking to the staff and faculty, the lunch ladies are speaking to the kids, and back and forth. So our idea is not that we are bringing wisdom to them, we're throwing a brick into the pond and making the ripples happen. And then the ripples are where the real action is, right? It's not, because in fact, whatever we say today, half of it will be obsolete a year from now, right? So it's really about entering into this ongoing process of curiosity and work in progress together. That's the best I can do. I'm willing to learn from you, though.
As a last question from Guia.
Yes. Hi, Doctor. I'll try to speak in English, but if I fail, my colleagues can help me.
Sure.
First of all, it was great to hear from you, your ideas. I absolutely agree with your perspective about dialogue between parents and kids. But here in Brazil and probably around the world, we see that many parents and many teachers think that the easier way to educate is banning devices. And I'd like to know your ideas about how we can build educational environments que favoreça, that support parents and teachers to understand technology not as a villain.
Villain.
Yes.
Well, first of all, what's interesting about the people who feel that there's this simple binary way to do it is what happens when the final bell rings and the kids walk out of the school? Right? And what you're basically saying is, see no evil, hear no evil, right? And we are, to my mind, we are defaulting on our responsibility as educators if we say we're going to ban it. First of all, despite what others may say, if we get rid of social media and smartphones, it's not going to be all better, right? Humans are humans. All that smartphones and social media do is create an amplification, create an acceleration of human nature. How can we harness that acceleration and accelerate us to something better? It's really about who we are, what we want for each other and for our society. And that's really where the action is. But we need to teach them to use these tools, or they're going to figure it out for themselves. And that's where we are right now. As tempting and seductive as it is to think that if we only did this fix, everything will be okay. I hate to tell, that's the pragmatist part of my optimistic pragmatism, is that we have to hope for the best, expect the worst, and work toward the best we can do. And not let perfect be the enemy of the good. Just keep working toward better, always. Like that young policeman who is chasing the guy who stole his pistol. We're still learning. And let's acknowledge that we're still learning, and let's learn together. And you know what? Let's enjoy it if we can. Let's have some fun. Because if it's not fun, it's not worth doing, right? And ultimately, that's what we're working toward. And let's acknowledge our limitations and lean on each other a little bit. One of the great things about, the recognition that we're all neurodiverse is realizing how we complement each other. And let's use social media that way, where we recognize and acknowledge our limitations and our need for each other. Think about the great relationships in our lives with real people. They're the people who love us not despite our limitations, but in many ways because of our limitations. Because they fill the gaps for us, right? And you know what? You like me anyway, despite the fact that I have a pimple in the middle of my forehead, right? And how cool is that? Those are the real relationships, and that's the secret behind my hope for humanity with social media is, I love you because of the things you can help me with, but also because I can help you with those things. With other.
Wonderful. Thank you.
This is me clapping you too. This is all of us together. We're in this together.
I'm not a pediatrician, but I want to hug you.
I'm a pediatrician.
40 kiddos. So, thank you, doctor.
Yes.
Muito obrigada. Digo também que agradecer muito a parceria com a ESPM, que proporcionou esse encontro. Agradecer muito vocês que passaram amanhã conosco. E agora, momento dos fotógrafos, mais tudo isso. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thank you.